The sun spread through the room, tinting the light wooden floor of the apartment with a golden hue. It was one of those afternoons where the heat of the day's end seemed to blend with the lightness of the conversations around. Julian was there, quiet, observing the movement of the party organized by mutual friends. His attention, always focused on the environment around him, shifted to her as soon as she entered. The sound of Amanda's laughter, free and sincere, cut through the murmurs of the crowd and made him unintentionally step forward as if the attraction was more than physical. It was something about her demeanor that seemed to infect everything around her. Julian, at 32 years old, had a meticulously organized life. He designed projects with precision, and his way of being reflected his control over situations. Always attentive, always planning. Nothing was out of place. His hair was perfectly cut, his demeanor reserved. He preferred to observe, to understand rather than expose himself to risks. Amanda, on the other hand, was the opposite. At 29, she lived her life as a freelance photographer with an energy that illuminated any space. Her voluminous hair and broad smiles accompanied her wherever she went. Her world was made of colors, of capturing fleeting moments and details that others hardly noticed. She had the gift of making the simple become precious, and her house was full of little treasures, shells, stones, postcards from places she still wanted to explore. When she saw him, walking towards him with a welcoming smile, a simple conversation transformed into a sincere exchange. She knew about the mountain house project he had done, and when speaking about it, her eyes sparkled, as if the sunset in the mountains was a piece of her own heart. And Julian felt an unexpected connection, a taste of something more. That night, when friends began to disperse, they were still there, on the couch, laughing about childhood stories, sharing thoughts about the future, and finding in the conversation a complicity that seemed to already exist between them, without needing to be forced. The first meeting was in a simple cafe, and Julian, always meticulous, arrived early. When Amanda entered, with that smile and a floral dress, he couldn't help but notice how she made everything around her seem more beautiful. They talked about travels, books, and somehow, that brought them even closer. She, with a bright look when mentioning Japan and cherry blossoms, he with the spontaneous proposal that one day they would share that trip, not realizing how much those words were already becoming a bond. Over time, they became inseparable. Julian, with his more restrained manner, learned to find lightness in the simple moments she loved so much. A walk with no destination, a carefree photograph at sunset. Amanda, on the other hand, found in Julian's security and care the support her life had always wished for. Together they formed a harmony that seemed unbreakable. The friends smiled, saying they were the definition of balance. She, full of energy and intuition. He, sober and protective. The perfect couple, completing each other effortlessly, as if fate had already drawn them that way. But as the months went by, something small and invisible began to creep between them. A gentle shadow that, unhurriedly, started to shape what seemed unchangeable. The first time Julian felt that strange sensation was when he found an old photo of Amanda on her social media. In it, a man was embracing her by the shoulders, both smiling at the camera. A pang of discomfort struck him. "Who is that guy in the photo with you?" he asked casually during dinner. "Which photo?" Amanda seemed confused. "The one from your trip to the coast about 3 years ago." "Oh, Raphael," she laughed. "He was my classmate in photography college. We went on that trip with a group of friends for a project." Julian nodded, forcing a smile, but a small voice inside him persisted. Was that really all there was to it? Over time, these small doubts began to appear more frequently. A message on her phone late at night, a call she took in another room, an unexplained delay for a meeting. For each situation, Amanda had a simple and logical explanation, but something inside Julian refused to fully accept it. "Who was calling you at that hour?" he asked one night, trying to keep his voice casual. "It was Caroline, that friend of mine who's going through a divorce. She's not well, Amanda explained, lying down next to him in bed. I see. It's just that... It was late. Amanda turned to face him, her brow furrowed. Julian, is everything okay? You seem worried. Everything's fine, he replied quickly, pulling her close. I'm just tired. But everything wasn't fine. With each passing day, that feeling grew inside him, a suspicion with no basis but which fed on small details, distorted interpretations, and old fears he didn't even know he still carried. In the beginning, Amanda tried to alleviate his concerns with humor. When he asked about a comment on a photo, she would show him the entire conversation. When he questioned her schedule, she shared details of her day. She believed that, with time and patience, she could help him overcome that insecurity. But the weight of constant distrust began to erode the brightness that once existed between them. Amanda felt suffocated, afraid, as if she were always being judged for crimes she hadn't committed. The space to breathe was shrinking, and the spontaneous moments they loved so much were being tainted by the shadow of doubt. The Friday that changed everything started like any other. Amanda had a busy day ahead, with photo shoots and a meeting with a potential client. Julian was immersed in an important project, working late at the office. Around 8 in the evening, Amanda received a call from Caroline. Her friend was devastated after an argument with her ex-husband about the custody of their children. Between sobs, she asked Amanda to come over to her apartment. I don't want to be alone today, Mandy. I'm afraid of what I might do. Without hesitating, Amanda grabbed her bag and keys. On the way, her car started to fail, leaving her stranded on a busy avenue. Frustrated, she called Anne, Julian's sister, who lived relatively close by and knew that he had some important business meetings until late that night. Of course I'll pick you up. Don't leave, Anne promptly responded. When she arrived at Caroline's apartment, it was already past 9. Her friend was sitting on the living room floor with puffy eyes and a half-empty bottle of wine. Amanda spent the following hours consoling her, listening to her vent and trying to offer some comfort. Anne stayed with them for a while, took some pictures to lighten the mood, and then left, saying that she would come back to pick Amanda up later. It was almost midnight when Amanda arrived home, emotionally and physically exhausted. She found Julian sitting on the living room sofa, arms crossed and expression stern. The dim light of the side lamp cast harsh shadows over his face, accentuating the tense angles. Where were you? He asked, his voice heavy. At Caroline's house. She's not well with the divorce, Amanda began, but he interrupted her. Don't lie to me! He stood up abruptly. Do you think I'm an idiot? I got a message from Roberto saying he saw you on the street with a man. Amanda was stunned, feeling as if she had been slapped. What man, Julian? Are you serious? Indignation vibrated in her voice, her hands trembling slightly. Don't play me for a fool, he retorted, his eyes locked on hers. You lie so well, it almost seems natural. The air seemed to grow dense between them, each breath more difficult than the last. Amanda felt something break inside her, not just her heart, but something more fundamental, like the trust she had tried to carefully build between them. How are we going to continue a relationship like this? She asked, with tears in her eyes. Are you never going to trust me? What have I done to make you always suspicious? It hurts me, Julian. I'm tired of being judged for something I didn't even do. Julian looked away, unable to face the pain he was causing. A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of the old clock on the wall and Amanda's ragged breathing. Without saying anything more, she picked up her bag and left, closing the door carefully, which in some way seemed more definitive than if she had slammed it. She went to her parents' house, needing some time to understand what was happening to herself and the relationship she valued so much. Days passed without communication between them. Amanda felt a mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. She loved Julian deeply, but the emotional cost was becoming too high. Each silent accusation, each suspicious look had created small cracks in her heart, and she feared that soon there would be nothing left but fragments. Julian, in turn, alternated between moments of intense regret and others when suspicion returned with full force. Part of him knew he was acting irrationally, but it was as if an invisible monster controlled him, whispering constant doubts in his ear. After almost 2 weeks, Amanda finally made her decision. With a heavy heart, she sent a message to Julian asking to talk. They met in a park, sitting on a bench under a leafy tree that provided shade from the strong sun that afternoon. Amanda noticed that Julian looked worn out, with deep dark circles under his eyes and a tired expression. "I can't take it anymore," she began, her voice choked, looking at her own hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "I love you, but I can't continue living in fear, being accused all the time. This is destroying me, Julian. You are someone I wanted for my whole life. But like this, it's not possible." His eyes filled with tears, and for a moment Amanda saw the man she had fallen in love with. Vulnerable, sincere, without the barriers of mistrust. "Please, don't do this," he implored, holding her hands. "I will change, I promise. I'll seek help, go to therapy, anything. Don't give up on us." Amanda felt her heart tighten. How many times had she heard similar promises? How many times had she believed things would be different? "You've promised me you would get better so many times." Amanda sighed, her eyes brimming with tears. "But it always ends up returning to the same place. I just want peace." The gentle breeze swayed her hair as silence settled between them. An elderly couple walked by holding hands, and Amanda felt a pang of pain thinking about all they could have been. "I really love you," she finally said, standing up, "and that's why I need to leave now." Julian remained seated on the bench, watching Amanda walk away along the park's gravel path, her silhouette growing smaller against the horizon. A part of him died at that moment, the part that still believed he could be loved unconditionally, despite his fears. The following months were a blur of sadness and self-destruction for Julian. He buried himself in work during the day and in drinking at night, trying to fill the void Amanda had left. He avoided friends, ignored calls, and lived in an increasingly messy apartment, a reflection of the inner chaos consuming him. Amanda also suffered intensely. She would cry when she found objects that reminded her of Julian, when she passed by places they frequented together. There were times when she almost called him, almost went back on her decision. But then she would remember the pain, the constant fear of being accused, and knew she had made the right choice, as painful as it was. On a rainy Sunday afternoon, about 4 months after the breakup, Anne decided to visit her brother. Using the spare key, she entered the apartment and found Julian sitting on the living room floor, leaning against the couch, surrounded by empty bottles. The TV was on some random channel, the sound low, only creating background noise. The place smelled of stale food and dirty clothes. "Oh, Julian," she sighed, sitting next to him on the floor and running her hand through his messy hair. "I lost her, Anne. Again. Just like all the other times," he murmured, his voice choked, staring fixedly at the wall in front of him. Anne watched her brother for a moment, noticing how much weight he had lost, how his eyes had lost their sparkle. She took a deep breath, gathering the courage for what she needed to say. "Look, I know it won't do any good now, but I need to try to explain something to you," she began hesitantly. "About that night. The one when you and Amanda had a big fight and broke up." Julian stood still, feeling a lump in his throat. "What is it?" he asked, trying to hide the tension. "You know that night you accused Amanda of being with another guy because your friend said he saw her with someone," Anne began, choosing her words carefully. "But he was wrong, Julian. She was never with another man." "What do you mean?" he murmured, frowning, finally turning to face his sister. "Amanda was with me. She called me asking for a ride because her car broke down and you were very busy that day. I went to pick her up and took her to Caroline's apartment, that friend of hers going through a hard time. We both stayed there for a while, and I even took some pictures with her." Julian felt a tightness in his chest, as if the air had vanished from the room. A wave of nausea hit him as the reality of what he had done began to crystallize. But why didn't she tell me that? She tried, but you weren't listening. You were so blinded by distrust that you didn't even let her explain. I tried to talk to you afterward, but you didn't want to hear anyone, Anne explained, with a tone that mixed understanding and frustration. Your friend must have confused her with someone similar because Amanda never left Caroline's apartment that night. Julian took a deep breath, feeling the old pain return with renewed force. I ruined everything, he whispered, a solitary tear rolling down his face. You need help, Julian, Anne said tenderly. You can't keep sabotaging yourself like this. That conversation was a turning point. In the following days, Julian began to dig up long-buried memories, seeking to understand the origin of his deep fear. He remembered his childhood in a perpetually tense house. The mother, a beautiful and restless woman, never seemed satisfied with the life she led. The father, a quiet and hard-working man, silently endured his wife's frequent betrayals. Julian was only 8 years old the first time he saw his mother leaving the house at night, getting into the car of an unknown man. He was 10 when he heard her yelling at his father during a fight. "You never gave me what I needed. He at least makes me feel alive." The father never reacted. He would just lower his head and absorb the words like blows. The next day, he acted as if nothing had happened, preparing breakfast while the mother slept in late. That silent acceptance confused and angered young Julian, who couldn't understand why his father simply didn't leave, why he continued to love someone who hurt him so much. Years later, when he asked his father why he had never left his mother, he received an answer that would haunt him. That's how love is, son. It hurts more to lose than to be deceived. This coexistence with disloyalty profoundly transformed Julian's view of relationships. Distrust became his constant companion, a defense mechanism against the pain he saw consuming his father. Deep down, he believed that trusting someone was risking being destroyed. This insecurity affected not only his romantic relationships but also his friendships. He kept everyone at a safe distance, never fully giving himself. To him, complete vulnerability was a luxury he could not afford. Motivated by the conversation with his sister and by the emptiness consuming him, Julian finally sought professional help. He began therapy, a painful process that required him to face his deepest fears. Week after week, he unearthed layers of protection he had built over the years. He learned about behavior patterns, how his childhood had shaped his worldview, and how he could begin to change. "I can't promise you'll never feel insecure again," his therapist said during one session. "But I can help you recognize these feelings when they arise and deal with them in a healthy way, without destroying your relationships." It was a long and often agonizing process. There were days when Julian wanted to give up, when the pain of confronting his traumas seemed unbearable. But the memory of Amanda and what they had lost kept him moving forward. A year had passed, marking significant transformations. Julian had rediscovered parts of himself that were buried under layers of fear. He learned to value moments of solitude, to build genuine friendships, and above all, to question automatic negative thoughts. On a sunny spring afternoon, while walking through the city centre, Julian stopped at a cafe he used to frequent with Amanda. It was an impulse, a need to relive memories that, although painful, also carried beauty. Upon entering, his heart almost stopped. Sitting by the window was Amanda, radiant in a yellow dress, animatedly telling something to a friend. Her hair was shorter, but her smile remained the same, the kind that made small wrinkles appear at the corners of her eyes. When their eyes met, there was a moment of recognition, followed by palpable hesitation. Julian felt the urge to leave, to avoid the confrontation, but something inside him, perhaps the new Julian he was building, made him walk toward her. "Hi," he said, with a shy smile. "Hi," she replied, surprised. There was an awkward silence, laden with unspoken words and shared memories. Amanda's friend mumbled something about getting more coffee and stepped away, leaving them alone. Julian took a deep breath, feeling his heart racing in his chest. I wanted to tell you that I'm trying to change. Honestly, I understood that I was very afraid of trusting because I never learned to trust anyone. But I'm facing that now. I just wanted you to know. Amanda looked at him attentively, observing the small changes, not just physical ones, but in the way he carried himself, how he spoke. There was an honest vulnerability in his words that she had never seen before. I'm happy for you, Julian. Everyone deserves a second chance, including you. A small smile appeared on his face, not one of hope for reconciliation, but of gratitude for the understanding. At that moment, they both understood a profound truth. Love is not always enough to maintain a relationship, but sometimes it is enough to inspire someone to be better. Julian understood that before loving another person, he needed to learn to deal with his own demons. And Amanda realized that loving also means knowing when to step away to preserve oneself. When they said their goodbyes, there were no promises of the future, only a silent acknowledgement of the growth each had experienced on their separate journeys. And perhaps that, in itself, was a deeper form of love than either of them had known before. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.